This is Progress Culture. Progress Culture is a weekly happening where master drummer Paul F. Murphy and I share live improvised music and impromptu conversations with people from various fields and expertises about community, value, art, science, freedom, and progress for all. We are excited to share it all with you, so have a listen and see what's going on this week on Progress Culture. Now, let's get into the show. But first, let's hear some music. Howdy everybody, Dominic Fragman and Paul Murphy here, doing the Progress Culture thing at TechPort today with Tabitha Dunn from Southern Maryland Loves You Now. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Great.
And Tommy Luganville, the director of TechPort. We love you all.
Nice to be here.
Yeah,
And Southern Maryland loves you as well.
I know.
Wow, she's already getting good.
Hey, I mean, they're doing it, so
Promo, yep.
Promo. Yeah, so I wanted to bring something up today. I've been thinking about. I've had several conversations with parents of young children, younger, like maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 8, and so there's some that are in school and there's some that are not in school. And as you know, the school right now is all virtual.
Yep.
And the conversation that ends up getting had is about imagination and how they feel like their kids lack imagination. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why, like, because I would be surprised by this. I have experience with, I have nephews and nieces that are all under the age of 8. And it doesn't seem to me that they lack any imagination. In fact, there's one thing that what my nephew Jacob does, it's really cracks me up. It's amazing. I get so happy when I see him doing it. But he takes his toys and he closes his eyes and he puts them in front of his face. He goes, "Ah!" And I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing something. And so I don't know that I necessarily see, it's not like a uniform lack of imagination. But like I said, I've talked to a couple of different parental units that say their kids are like they think their kids lack imagination, and part of the reason why they say that they feel that way is because of the amount of screen time that they have.
Oh God, you're gonna get me going.
That's good. That's what we're here for. And I was wondering, like,
Jesus,
do you feel like that's a thing? I mean, I know we have a variety. We don't have people that have any young kids here. You have a very young kid, but I don't know. Like, do you guys see this? You deal with students, and you're of a student age still.
Okay, let me just get you started here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mommy blogs, okay? And young mothers, they use these blogs and they go onto these Facebook groups. And I can tell you, right now, it's very in fashion to be anti-screen. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks that screens, like, melt your child's brain.
Yeah.
So, my daughter, I should say, her mother and her friends and other folks believe that, if my daughter sees a screen for more than 10 minutes a day, it's going to, like, permanently damage her brain. And I don't really know what to think about an infant. I mean, honestly, I don't want to comment because I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Sure.
But the trouble I have is that when I was growing up, some of the most interesting things I learned were from watching TV. And it's because of what I chose to watch. Mm-hmm. So if you turn on the television, I mean, maybe I was a weird little kid, but I was watching the History Channel or Discovery Channel. And I learned a ton of information.
Right.
So I guess my thoughts on all this, and Tabitha can talk about, like, students and stuff like that, because that's a whole other facet. But my thoughts are, I think you always say this, it's what you feed yourself. Mm-hmm. That is kind of what you put out. Yeah. So if you're feeding yourself screen time that's full of trash,
yeah,
you're going to get trash.
Sure.
But if the kids are feeding their brains with brain teasers and puzzles,
sure. I wouldn't put this on. I don't want to. We don't have to keep this on kids. I try not to do it so it's like, yeah, oh, the kids, because it's not something I think that it's just happens to kids.
It happens to everybody.
Yeah, sure. But right now, I think it's an extra conducive situation for young people because their schooling is all online and stuff.
Well, and I think it's also important to recognize the generational differences too, because I think parents in particular of a different generation have one idea of what is trash and what creativity looks like. Mm-hmm. That may be different than what, creativity could look like in a younger generation, and what we view as creativity, even younger than me, what they view as creativity and expression could be just something totally different than what previous generations are used to seeing. So they don't classify it as that, even mm-hmm. though it is.
I want her to comment on this. So 4 years ago, I was teaching freshmen and college age freshmen, and I started the class and I said very specifically, do you all use Facebook? Of course, everybody said no, we don't use Facebook. And I was like, oh, well, if I were to put my money into a new social media app, what would it be? This is 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they all said TikTok. Mm-hmm. And I went on to it and I was like, what is this? And so that goes back to what she's saying about, like, maybe just because we don't think it's creative, maybe they do. I don't know. I mean, is there something else besides TikTok now?
I mean, I don't know of anything that's rising up beyond TikTok right now. I mean, I know Instagram is still very big, and Instagram is innovating in ways to make it, I'd say their platform to become more similar to
Yeah.
a TikTok platform because of the popularity
Yeah.
of that and keeping it going, because Instagram's been around a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think also, though, that right now, parents are spending a lot more time with their children.
True.
So they're seeing a lot more time, spending a lot more time, and they may be seeing it as, oh, well, you shouldn't be watching this. You shouldn't be interacting with this as much because that's not allowing you to express yourself. When really, I think most children, they're going to express themselves no matter what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But Dominic, you were asking about creativity, and okay. So I mean, for starters, I think most people are addicted to screens. Right? Like I'll say I'm probably addicted to screens. I think that the company's designed it that way, right?
Brian Jordan talks a lot about that.
It's the way that they buzz. It's the way that they ring. It's the coloring. They literally use people that run casinos to come into these tech companies and get you addicted. And then I'm laughing because you're asking us about screens. There's 2 screens facing me. There's another screen over there. There's one in my pocket. There's another one over there that's off.
Yeah.
And then there's a camera, which doesn't really technically count as a screen, but there's a screen on the other side of that.
And this show will be on a screen.
Yeah. So that goes back to the point of like, is it killing creativity? I don't know. I mean, not to sound too crazy, but I had a dream the other night. You'll appreciate this, where it was a very lucid dream. And in my dream, I basically told myself that I needed to just stare at the window for 30 minutes. And in my head, I was having these thoughts, right, in the dream. And I was thinking, okay, you need to stare out the window. And then myself was speaking to myself saying, well, why do you need to do that? And the inner voice was telling me, sometimes you just need to be bored.
That's what your inner voice was
That
saying.
was what my inner voice said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was sometimes you just need to be bored. You do not need to be entertaining yourself at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And my inner voice said, when you're bored, that's when you can learn a lot about not only yourself, but about your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy because it was the window in my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was in my dream, I spent 20 minutes or 30 minutes looking out the window. So it's sad that I had to go to sleep to do that.
I don't even know if it's so much that you need to be bored. I almost feel like that's just the feeling of not being overwhelmed with a constant barrage of stimuli.
Right.
Even just
Right.
being and not being overwhelmed.
Correct. Bored is a
existing.
negative word to use.
Yeah.
I should have said what she said, which is you can just turn it off every
And
now
I
and then.
definitely relate to that. I feel that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
You feel what way?
Where I feel like I need to like just shut down and not have outside stimuli and just, I call it just staring at a wall.
Yeah.
Just sometimes you got to stare at the ceiling for a second
Yeah.
and just reset,
Input,
Yeah.
constant input,
Right.
Yeah.
You can only handle so much of
much
that.
of it, right?
Yeah.
I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. Like I feel like I want to ask, like, because this idea of boredom, right? If I think I've struggled with the word. Sometimes I'm way too literal, but this idea of being bored, when I find myself with myself, like actually being with myself, not just sitting there and whatever, but you're sitting there, and when you're sitting there, you'll either go inside or you'll go internal or external.
Yeah.
Which there's either way, whatever. It's just an activity that's happening, and if that activity that's happening is internal or external, and it is with a minimum or diminishing amount of stimuli, then the focus is going on something, whether it's here in the heart or the head or wherever. I don't think of myself as bored when I'm doing
Right.
that, though. You know what I mean? Like
That was kind of
and I
what I
don't
was
mean to I'm not trying to be whatever, but is that I don't know. I just think there's that, but I guess that also takes me to this sort of literal analysis of the words. the thing that you initially said too was this screen time. It's not killing certain things, right? And that when you choose to put something that maybe is helpful or something you can learn from on the screen, that is a thing. Now, learning is different, I think, than imagination, right? So you can have positive input from the screens and develop from it in an intellectual way or whatever it is, right? But then this idea of having creativity and imagination is a bit different. And something where we're able to look at lots of different people's ideas, that they're doing dances or they're blowing up soda bottles or whatever it is that's coming up on that TikTok scroll or that Instagram scroll, right? Are maybe those things are informative, maybe they're exciting, maybe they're fun. Are they also methods that are conducive to the extrapolation of your own ideas?
I think so. I mean, that would be the definition of inspiration, wouldn't it? I mean, you're inspired by other people's creative ideas.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. If you are inspired, does it mean that you yourself are creative? Does it mean that what you were inspired by was even creative?
Or like you're just copying somebody else's what
Right.
you're saying.
And is not
but
to say
inspiration.
is there a difference?
I don't know the exact definition, but doesn't it mean that something causes you to act?
Sure.
So I guess if you are actually inspired, you would then have to manifest on that. You can't just be like, I'm going to do this one day. No, you actually have to bake the cake, right?
I totally agree. But if before we go that way, inspiration to act isn't necessarily inspiration to act in creativity.
Yeah.
True.
And perhaps it's something that is more exclusive than it is inclusive, which we don't really like to do. But is creativity just you saying that you did this from your brain or your body or your heart or whatever, right? That if it matched something else, or is it still creative? You know what I'm saying? Like if I go and paint a picture of a lighthouse, is that creativity?
I mean, I would say so, because really, even if you're not intentionally copying somebody or being inspired by somebody, you're being inspired by your entire life's worth of experiences and inputs. Whether you like it or not, you've been shaped and you've been molded by your experiences.
He's asking about creativity, not inspiration.
Yeah, but your own creativity that comes from inside. I mean, that comes from somewhere, you know. It's shaped by other things as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's going to be. There's no way around that. And especially if you go as far as like an essentialist thing, where it's like everything that we talk about this on the show, everything that you know and communicate are all passing through this filter of you, but it's all coming from everything you've ever experienced, whether or not you remember it or not. It's informing what you do, what you think, you know, what you generate or create. But is generating creating in the same sense of as in the sense of creativity? You know, does that make sense?
No, I think I get what you're saying. Let me bring it back a little bit.
Do it.
Let me bring it back. So I'm gonna bring up Southern Maryland Loves You again, because that's what I'm going to do. So we have the hot box, right? Would you say that that's a creative idea, or would you say that that's an idea that's been generated by...
It's an innovation.
Right.
It's not an invention. It's an innovation. It's taking something that already existed and tweaking it.
So you'd
There's
say that there was no creativity involved. Because it's a thing that
there
already
was
existed.
innovativeness involved. I don't know if I could say creative.
I think it depends on the definition of creativity, or what the definition of creativity is. Is that something that that's something that we need to do for this conversation?
We need a fact checker.
No, not a fact checker.
Wait. Who are we though?
We are they who are sitting here conversing on this.
We cannot tell people what creativity is.
We cannot tell people what creativity is, but we can decide on what we think it is for the sake of having a conversation.
Okay, so unless time is like what's his face said in that show True Detective, unless time is just a flat circle, then things had to start somewhere.
Right.
Right? So ideas had to come from somewhere, unless time is a flat circle and it's just an infinite loop, right? So if the debate is, are we just taking iterations of things that already took place or that already existed?
Right.
It's impossible to be creative if we're just in an infinite loop, because we're just copying something.
That was kind of what I was trying to make a point about.
You know what I mean?
There's nothing truly 100% unique about any idea, really.
Yeah. Unless we can all agree, which I don't know if we're going to agree right now, that there was, in fact, a starting point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything from that point, there were things that were just created.
I think that's my point.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Unless time's a flat circle.
So you guys would say that you can't create, if in this term, you wouldn't necessarily create anything totally unique.
I mean, I don't think you could really say something is 100% totally unique. I mean, unless you've discovered something that's entirely new, or there's been a breakthrough in technology that is just something we've never seen before. I mean, maybe that changes
but
the
most
rules.
things aren't most things that we label, whether we label them as an innovative or creative, whatever. Aren't most of those things already in existence, either on the planet
Exactly.
or within the universe that we know of?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
We didn't create it.
Yeah.
But like the hot box from Southern Maryland Loves You, it may not have been created, but because of positivity, it went forward, and a young man thought of using that to help.
Right. It's a new use. It's a new combination of technology that already existed into something that wasn't there previously.
Right. I mean, because, you have heat from the sun already, so.
Right. We didn't invent heat.
We didn't invent
fire,
that.
or oil, right? I mean, or steel.
Yeah.
Or ovens.
Right. The oven things existed. Yeah.
It literally started out as an easy bake oven. The stupid oven is still in the kitchen right now.
Yeah.
That's what it started as.
Yeah.
And so that's not, I guess it's not creative, but it's innovative.
But nobody thought about making it the size that it is and the format that it is and using it for the purpose that we use it for.
For the purpose, for
Right.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But that still doesn't answer Dominic's question.
I don't, it's tough to think about, isn't it? Like, yes, it's all already here. And I agree with that. And that's part of the reason why I think that it's difficult for technology in ways to develop something that we haven't seen, because everything that it has is already here, whether or not it's flight or sonar and radar or fire and different things like this, nuclear technology. These things already exist. We're mining things so that we can fuel that or whatever. So if it's not coming, but I also believe that technology can demonstrate a possibility. You know what I mean? So like that you can wrap your mind around something that when you didn't have it right in front of you operating, that you couldn't even imagine that it was a thing to do.
that happened with some of the earlier scientists. I'm trying to remember the exact ones. Wasn't it Newton and Einstein that were able to demonstrate theories on paper that they had never actually seen in person?
Einstein was mostly a theoretician.
Yeah.
You know, his stuff all came from mostly thought experiments, according to the things that I've read. I didn't know the guy, right? So, you know, the things that I've read, he mostly was a thought experiment person. And for a good portion of his life, it wasn't like he was bad at math. Those stories about Einstein flunking and all that, those aren't true. But he's a really smart dude, but he wasn't enamored with math. And he didn't think that you could develop the kind of understanding of the universe and its operating functionings by just using numbers. He didn't believe that, at least for a portion of his life. And so yeah, those people were doing thought experiments.
What about Tesla though? Like not the car, but the guy, Nikola Tesla. Whether you believe it or not, but some of the stories about him being a theorist were he would just have visions of things. And then like to the point of we had wireless charging stations back in like 1910 that he came up with, and they worked, and they just popped into his head. You know, like that seems pretty original.
Well, at the same time, though, if we're kind of playing this quote unquote game, I don't think it's a game, but this idea that those things were here. He extrapolated those from nature. Yeah, you know, just like I mean.
Well, and it was also discovery. I mean, it's discovering what's here and what's out there, and Tesla did discover how to make what he generated electrically, but because someone else had more push and power, his was put to the side and not used.
Edison?
Huh?
Him and Edison like hated each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Well, the infrastructure that they all had in place already. You know, think about it. Like, I mean, it's just this is part of the reason why I imagine Musk calls his company Tesla for lots of reasons, but think about the similarity in coming up against an industry that is firmly established. Consumers, infrastructure, factories, all these things, and then somebody's going to come along with a thing that's going to wipe that out. You know what I mean? If I'm the guy that has the infrastructure and the consumers, I'm not going to want this dude to come through. Yeah. I'm not going to want this idea to come through, because then that takes the money out of my pocket or whatever. I personally don't feel that way. I want to see things progress. But so that was part of what Tesla came up against, was these guys were all going, we already have our plants. We're already using this kind of power. We've already got everything in line. And yeah, why don't you come work for us? We'll buy those patents and throw them away. Yeah, because they're going to mess up our stuff, you know?
I mean, that happens in innovation in any industry. If you're shaking up a system that already exists, you're going to ruffle feathers. You're going to upset people that have already done well for themselves, doing it the way they've always done it.
That's like this app. It's called Robinhood, which ironically they named Robinhood, kind of like Tesla did. And you can buy and sell stocks for free. There's no charge, which is a shake up to the system.
Yeah.
Because usually when you buy and sell stocks, you got to pay somebody to do it. So if you don't already know that, anyone listening, if you were to buy a stock on like E-Trade or something like that, there's a fee. And the reason there's a fee is because you got to pay to play. And it's small. It's like $5 a trade or something. So Robinhood comes along and says, this is stupid. We'll just give everybody an app and they can buy and sell their own stocks for free. And that's what they did. And the stock market is kind of like, the traditional system is kind of losing their minds right now, because millennials and Generation Z, they're just buying and selling stocks all day long now, and they're just picking companies that they like. And all these bankers are like, well, the fundamentals for that company are bad. You shouldn't buy that stock. And wait, but they're not doing things the way that we like. And so all these young people are just trading, and they're just driving these companies like the valuation of the stock through the roof, and Wall Street's losing it because they're like, GameStop, the game company, the stock just keeps going like this. And
Right, it like went really high yesterday, right?
Because of this thing called Robinhood, which is all these people who play video games,
Right.
are like, well, video games aren't going anywhere, so I'm buying stock in GameStop.
Right.
But all the bankers are like, but the financials don't make sense. And then the millennials are like, we don't give a crap. And they just keep buying it. And so you saw that yesterday?
Yeah. It like skyrocketed yesterday.
Yeah, but anyway, so to Tabitha's point, they had a really hard time this first couple of years. I met them when they were like 6 people in California. Yeah, and I was like, you guys are geniuses. And this is not even a joke. I asked them if I could give them money. Like I was like, can I give you money? I want to invest in your company. And they said we appreciate that. We have the money we need. And I was like, well, that sucks for me. And then, shit, dude. I mean, they're crushing it right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, here we are. Yeah. So I think Tabitha's generation, when she talked about content creation and like what we perceive as being creative, is different than them.
I was just going to go back to that.
It's the same thing as the stock market.
Right.
People are like, well, the stock market doesn't make sense anymore. Well, it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense to you.
Right. It makes sense to the people who are investing in
That's
it.
right. So, but I don't know if that's creative or innovative or what, but
I think it's just different perceptions and different ways of doing things. Because like when you were talking about how, parents are like, I can't believe you've been looking at the screen for this long. This can't be healthy for you or whatever.
Right.
The younger generations, they've grown up on that. That is normal for them. They're like, this is what you do, but older generations didn't grow up with that. They're like, well, this isn't what you do. This is not how you grow up because it's not the way that I grew up.
Right.
But,
yeah.
It may not necessarily be a right or wrong. It just might be different.
No, I think that is definitely
Exactly. Yeah, it's different.
I guess, I don't know where I want to go with it, or if I don't ask these questions because I feel like I know the answer or it should be a certain way or anything. Though I do think, when I think of creativity, though, I think I don't know. I think I myself tend to think of something different, and it certainly has everything to do with my experience, And it's not like you want to try to tell somebody what creativity is, or that what they're doing, whether or not it's creative. To me, it's not about whether or not it's worth doing. You know what I mean? Like if we sat here and said, all right, well, this is what creativity is, and that's not what you're doing, it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't worth doing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, even if we sat here and said, well, the creation of the hotbox, it wasn't really necessarily creative, would it mean that we wouldn't want to do it or that we are proud to have done it? Of course not.
Yeah, for sure.
But seriously, that's a very good point
that
you just made, that it's okay to do things if they're not creative. Because you're right. We all talk about these things now, and it's like, if you're not being creative, somehow it's meaningless. But that's not the case.
Not at all. Yeah.
That's not the case. You're right. I mean,
it's more of just like a brain game for me. Like, what is this thing? Because I agree, there's nothing new under the sun. But I've said it, but the sun isn't always shining on everything. Mm-hmm. So there's certain, it doesn't, whatever it is, if it's shining already or not, there's value in doing it, or there maybe there's not. But you know what I mean? That's not up to me to determine. It's just something that I'm interested in. But I do believe that there is nothing new under the sun. But I also I have this construct in my mind, and it's very difficult to talk about, especially when you get to that point where it's like there's nothing new. So then what is creativity? If there's nothing new, then that's like leaning on the way that there's no such thing as creativity. And I just don't believe that. I don't believe that there's not something inside of each of us that is unique, and that when extrapolated is an illumination of truth, of a universal truth. And the more of those you illuminate, the sort of, I don't even know if it's a better understanding of the functioning of the universe. It seems like the logic of it would be, but what the hell does logic have to do with any of it?
Nothing.
That's led me to a lot of places that
Because if you treated everything as logical, then you wouldn't take an oven and cook face masks with it.
Yeah, sure.
Or you wouldn't take a phone and be like, hey, let these kids trade stocks. I mean, you just wouldn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Logic has nothing to. Logic can stay out of here.
But it's true, Tommy, what you were saying earlier about quite a few of the individuals that came up with really, really brilliant ideas all have claimed that they had visions
Yeah.
that came to them. Some say they came to them. Some say they were actually given them.
Yeah. I mean, in Paul, like even dating back as far as like Joan of Arc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, she was Catholic, I think. I believe she was Catholic. Religious. It doesn't
Right.
matter which denomination. And so her vision, she claims, was God. But like Tesla, he doesn't. I don't think he claimed God was his vision. But either way, people have been making that same statement for a long time.
Right.
Where things just come into their head and then they act on them.
And it's an unexplainable thing.
Yeah.
That's why people naturally want to attribute that to something, because
Yeah.
they can't explain where.
Yeah. So maybe that is creativity.
The having the
vision.
The vision.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. There was a certain amount of things when I was living in Manhattan that I was engaged in as far as personal practices. For whatever reason, not just the actual practice of drumming and doing music, but I've talked about it before. For whatever reason, well, I know how it initially started. Paul would tell me, you were born at a time where all of the music that you're exposed to is in what we would call like a duple feel or a two feel. It doesn't have as much of a triplet 3 type of feeling, which we don't have to get into what that means right now, but upon hearing this, I wanted the other side, because rock and roll is more like, and the other things are more like, so you got the difference between and we're not used to this one so much anymore. So I was like, all right, I got to get that 3 thing going. So as a biped, when I walk, right, left, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I was like, all right, well, if that's the first thing I've got to do is get away from 1, 2 everywhere I go. All right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. So I decided that I was going to think of it, instead of walking like right, left, I was going to think about it as right, left, left, right, left. So I started walking around like that. But I also wanted to be able to develop my weak side. So instead of leading with my dominant right side, I led with my left side. So left, right, left, right. But of course, I'm not walking that fast. And then I would connect my breath to my walking. Inhale through my nose for 6 pulses. Exhale through my nose for 6 pulses. And I had meditations that I would do. I was walk around Manhattan doing these things while all this stuff is going on. Jogging, walking, riding on the train, whatever. Keeping these things going. And to be perfectly honest, I started having visions while I was walking around in the street. And what they were initially was things that I could see at the drums. All these things that I'm playing that do like this crazy stuff, I saw those in my brain long before a vision, in the street even, long before those ever came out. I've never seen anybody play anything like that. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I saw it there. And then that's what I started to work on. And we eventually wrote a 340-page book that includes how to get to those things, But, yeah, like, so the vision part of it. But even in that process, like, of what I'm doing playing the guitar, I was breaking down. I've never heard anybody play things like that. And I very intentionally was breaking down the structures of the common and conventional and the traditional and analyzing what they were and then trying to apply that as if it were a system of communication. So now instead of using XYZ, I'm using, something totally different than that, but that sort of captures what XYZ do without ever really referencing them. So the discovery and the process of discovery through that sort of relied on things that were pre-existing, but very intentionally for me was something that I decided I'm going to go way against that. And I know that exists, and I want to come up with something
right, because
different.
those notes have always existed.
The notes are
and
there.
all of the tones around them, above them, below them,
Mm-hmm.
they've always been there for anyone or everyone. And certain people
True.
hear them a different way. Certain people will play them the same way. Certain people will play them a different way.
I mean,
And you develop, a sense of what you're trying to do musically with the music, with the notes that you've seen and heard. And you're trying to come out with something that hasn't really been used before over and over and over again. So that discovery is almost like that thing that you had on your Facebook where if you let your mind go into your heart, now that seems like, well, what kind of statement is that? But even just sitting here, if just for 3 seconds we all just went straight into our minds and then brought our mind into our heart, there's two totally different feelings.
mm-hmm.
And they are a great difference even though they're the same.
Mm-hmm.
And very closely related, and they're all in this one spirit. And there's many, many, many spirits here.
You guys are going deep today. Oh God!
Well, it's something it's interesting,
But
because
it's true. Everything that he said.
I will say this. I shouldn't even have started with me. I've searched for 13 years. I've been studying with Paul Murphy. And I went through this thing where Paul Murphy couldn't be the best, the most, not the best, but like the highest level and most unique drummer I've ever heard, right? I couldn't go out on the scene and tell people that the guy that I study with is the guy. You know what I mean? It just feels like not right. Like everybody, of course, you're biased. You study with the guy. Of course, you're going to say that about him. I went through many years of searching all over the place. Anytime I was on tour, going into places, looking on YouTube, scouring the internet, any name, check it out. I mean, my girlfriend, I put on so many videos like that she gets bummed out and leaves the room now because she's like, well, I don't know why you watch this stuff. It always is bad. And I'm like, I know, but what if it's not going to be bad? What if they're going to be really good? I want to see that. And, I haven't found anybody that plays the drums like Paul Murphy. And you can say like, oh, it sounds like this over here. When you A-B them, nowhere near it. It's not the same. And it is very different. It's a very different concept. It's a very different approach. And when I think of that kind of thing, I wonder like this all-inclusive definition of creativity or this definition of creativity that says, well, there's nothing you can create. When I hear something like that and see something like that, what is that? I don't know what to think of that, because how can there be this thing on creativity where you can't do it, or that everything that everybody puts out on a painting or a sound or whatever it is, that it is also creative. And I don't know if it matters, but it just
I mean, the creative part is doing it differently, though. I mean, you're not inventing drums. You're not inventing drum playing. That's been
Sure.
around, you know? But what's different is the process and how you do it. And I mean, that's what we were saying with the box before, you know. There's been ovens around. There's been drumming around. It's what the purpose is and how you do it that's different and creative about it.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah, I think that's great. I don't know. Maybe we can. We have to do a part 2, I guess. I guess all the
I
parts
feel
are
way too trippy right now. Just cut the show.
Yeah, well, so
I gotta act normal.
you came from Blur, song number 2.
Yeah.
The mind's
All
entered
amped
the
up.
heart. Let's just put it that way.
I'm tired now.
All right, we'll cut it. And we can't go anywhere this week without acknowledging the greatness of Tommy's hoodie. So,
Thank you, Dr. Weintraub.
Dr. Flo.
This is brought to you by Dr.
Yes.
Jared Weintraub of the Flow Group. This
Yes.
is a George Washington officer uniform. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
We're going to be here every Tuesday. You can find us progressculture.org. Thank you, Southern Maryland Loves You. Thank you, TechPort. And we're doing it every week. And thank you guys for being on the show. It's always a pleasure. We shouldn't let so many episodes pass before we do this again.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. See you next Thank you all so much for being with us. We are grateful that you give us your consideration and attention. Please follow and reach out to the Spirit of Innovation and Freedom and TechPort on Facebook and YouTube, or at spiritinnovationfreedom.com and techportsomd.org, and also www.progressculture.org. Let us know what you're thinking and what you want to hear about and how you're feeling. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to see you again next week on Progress Culture. Thank you, much love, and see you soon.